Welcome to Open House, the real estate and mortgage show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
Always tough this time of year to figure out what day it is. If you're curious, it's Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday? Are we here on the wrong day again? You know what's funny is we were talking about that as we were getting on the air, and I literally set an alarm for the radio show just because I wasn't sure what day it was. Right,
the 28th of December.
To wake you up, you mean, in the morning?
Yeah, to wake me up. Okay. No, to remind me that it's actually today's a Saturday. Yeah,
the last show of the year.
Last show. You know what? It's been an eventful year. I think we'll talk about what happened in 2024, how everything's gone, and
what surprised you the most?
From a mortgage standpoint?
Yeah. No, from real estate, and then I'll ask Paul about
mortgage. I'll answer real estate. He likes to do mortgage stuff. So, no, you know what surprised me is the fact that, and I thought we were going to see it coming, but I honestly thought it was going to happen in 2025, is the 30-year amortization. You know, with the lack of housing, we started the year still talking about the fact that there's not a lot of supply out there. So if there's a lack of supply out there, you would think that you wouldn't introduce a 30-year amortization because we have a lack of supply. And if you do that, then it might prompt, real estate prices to go up. But, the fact that interest rates have come down, I think, was expected. Now, I expected fixed rates.
Did they come down more than you thought?
I think prime rate came down a little bit more than I expected. But what I'm disappointed at is the fact that fixed rates haven't come down. But that's as a result of what's going on south of the border. So,
but finally they've started to now.
They've started to, but we still got a long ways to go. And here's hoping that with Donald Trump going in as president in January, that his 4-year cycle. We had low interest rates. We had reasonable interest rates. The interest rates, mortgages, both south of the border and here were in the 3s, 2s, and 3s. So here's hoping that he brings that back.
Yeah, but what happens with the Canadian dollar where it is now?
Well, the Canadian dollar is as a result of everything else that's going on right now. So the fact that Bank of Canada has dropped as aggressively as they have, and the U.S. has only dropped, 3/4 of a point in the U.S., 1.75% here. So,
well, what happens when you combine that with tariffs if they come in?
Well, the tariffs is another story. So that's, I mean, that could be crippling to the economy, which means we would go into a recession, which means we would get those low interest rates. So if you've got a mortgage coming up for renewal and your job is secure, maybe you want that because then you're going to get low interest rates. But it would hurt the rest of the economy for sure.
What would you have liked to have seen happen in the past year that didn't happen?
Well, I would have liked to have seen, the government's ease up on the red tape of building homes, because once we get that supply in place, then I think we're going to start to see the interest rates come down, and we're going to see the fact that the economy is going to start to roll again. We're going to see the unemployment rate hopefully not continue to go up the way it has, instead maybe stabilize and come down a little bit. I'd like to see that, and personally, I think there's a leadership change that's needed in our country. It's very clear based on everything that's happened over the 12 months, but specifically what's happened over the last month. And it sounds like we might. 2025 is, there's so much that's going to happen.
We're in for a year, that's
even
for
on
sure.
The real estate market. I think it's going to be, one of those, if this happens, then this is going to happen with the real estate. But if this doesn't happen, then all of a sudden, maybe we're going in a different direction. Like you can't even pinpoint. There was one article, and I don't know if you saw it, Paul, in the Financial Post yesterday, that somebody predicted that real estate prices in Canada would go up by 10%. This year, and I scratched my head, and I said, well, how's that possible with interest rates being as high as they are, unemployment being as high as it is? How could real estate go up 10%? I just struggle with that.
It very well could.
But that's a Canada number,
That's a Canada number. Obviously we're going to get into predictions, what's going to happen next year a little bit later in the show, but there's a lot. We're going into a year where usually you can predict what's going to happen. I think this year is going to be very tough to predict, mainly because I do believe as the rates come down, not enough inventory in the market, prices should go up, absolutely should go up. But I do believe there's a lot of people that are lagging, that have been on the market for a long time, that have taken their house off the market to put it back on in the spring, plus all the people coming on in spring. We might have more inventory than we've had in years past, and that might slow down the price increase a little bit. So we don't really know where it's going to go, but I do believe that historically we have no inventory. Like our inventory is so low. We are going to get more rate drops, probably not as aggressive as we saw in the last half of this year. So we will get some more rate drops. I think they're going to be much slower. And because of that, our price appreciation might go up a lot slower than what we're hoping or predicting. I mean, nobody wants to see what we saw at the start of 2022 where rates went up, overnight, went up, every night.
Crazy.
It was insane. We can't sustain that, and nor should we be able to sustain that. I think if that happened again, we'd be back into a little bit of a bubble market, and they'd have to do something to slow down the market again. So, but I do think we are going to have some price appreciation. Will it be 10% here in Ottawa? My prediction is absolutely not.
I'm seeing 4 to 5.
That's aggressive too. I think we're anywhere between, maybe 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 6, which I know is a big variance, but that's probably where we're going to be, anywhere between 3 and 6%, probably closer to the lower end. Number of sales we've seen already by the end of this year, when the numbers come out at the end of this month, our numbers are going to be up somewhere between 12 and 13% number of sales, which is great. But keep in mind, we had a very strong Q4 this year compared to where we were last year, which made up a lot of that leeway. And our prices are probably going to be somewhere around 1.5 to 2% increase this year over last year, which is a flat market. It's a very flat market. And I think, you asked Frank what sort of surprises or what things that sort of didn't happen or did happen in 2024. And for me, one of my biggest surprises is as we saw these rates drop, I mean, no one saw them go up as fast as they did. We were hoping for them to come down a lot faster, but almost 2% drop, over that last 6 months of
prime rate,
yeah. Almost a 2% drop is a 1.75% drop. I thought we'd see more first-time home buyers and investors getting into the market, and I think that was a little slower than what we were hoping for. So what I do think, though, is there are a lot of first-time home buyers who are getting themselves out of their leases. A lot of them are already done their year, and they're on their month-to-month. And I do believe that we will see a lot of those first-time home buyers come off the shelf very, very quickly in the start of 2025. I think we'll see some investors coming back as well. So I think that will help spur the market a little bit.
There's got to be a lot of pent-up demand, though, from people that have been waiting and waiting.
There's a ton of pent-up demand. My fear is once you get into that rental trap, you're kind of stuck in that rental trap, because how do you pay $3,000 a month plus utilities and still save for a down payment for a new house? So it's really, really hard. So I'm hoping those people that have just been in that rental trap for, let's say, a year because of the way the rates were, they get out of it sooner than later, and they get out really quick, because the longer you're in that rental trap, the longer you're going to be stuck in that rental trap. So, I'm hoping some people are starting to save their money, putting things aside for that down payment, and starting to get into the buying game, mainly because we are going to see some very attractive pricing as the rates start to come down before it starts to go up. So we're here right now.
That's the hard part, though, right? I mean, you talk about you're paying $2,800. So I spoke to a gentleman yesterday, been in Canada for 6 years. Both him and his wife work in the healthcare industry. They combined, they make about $200,000 a year. So qualifying is not an issue. They'd like to buy a home. The challenge is they're paying $2,800. They have 3 kids, saving for the down payment. That's the struggle. Because I said to him, listen, if you're going to buy a townhouse in the $600,000 range, just your land transfer tax is $9,500. You're a first-time home buyer, you get $4,000. You got to come up with $5,500 plus your legal fees, plus the PST on the default insurance. You're $10,000 just in closing costs, and you got to come up with the down payment, another $35,000. He goes, well, I don't know how I can do that. Like we're barely, even though we make $200,000 with the cost of everything and having 3 kids, we're barely saving $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So it's going to take me 3-4 years before I can save enough money.
How can 7 years costs be a third of your down payment? That's crazy.
Well, because the land transfer tax,
but that doesn't seem right. Is what I'm saying. No, but he's getting they're getting a $4,000 rebate, and it's still $10,000. Without it, it'd be $14,000, $15,000. This is here. You go to Toronto, you buy in the core of Toronto, you got a double land transfer tax, which hasn't gone away yet, which is stifling. It's crazy. So.
Yeah, it's so hard, and that's why I say if you're stuck in that rental trap, the quicker you can get out of it ASAP, because before long you start eating into the savings that you're putting aside for your down payment, kids' sports, dinners out, trips, this and that, trying to live life. Before long you have no down payment. So get out of that rental trap as soon as you can. We're seeing pricing right now that is very attractive. I mean, our especially in the townhouse market where it's gone from, $750 to like a nice townhome now is $600. So it's actually come down. You can get into the market at a reasonable price. Rates are coming down, so you're going to get some reasonable rates. You're going to be able to probably get into purchasing a property for cheaper than you would for renting a property. So if you can save for that down payment or get some help for that down payment, there hasn't been a time in a long time where it's very attractive to get into the market, and right now is very attractive to get into the market.
521-TALK, 520-255. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Paul Rushforth is here. Frank Napolitano is here. To the phones we go and say hello to Mo in Ottawa. Hello, Mo.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
I have two houses. I have a mortgage on that, 1.74. I negotiated back in 2 years ago, and the maturity is in December 2025.
Okay.
I purchased a new house, and the close from a builder, and the closing is in July 29, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if I can carry on. I'm going to sell one of them to finance the other one. Yeah. That the one I bought. Can I carry on the?
Yeah. Who's the mortgage with for the last 6 months, right? So you're saying, can you port the mortgage over for the final 6 months of your current term?
Correct. Yes.
Who's the mortgage with?
Can I say it in the phone?
Sure, you could.
Yeah, CIBC.
CIBC. Yeah, CIBC's mortgages are portable. Now, some banks and lenders, I'm not sure CIBC's policy. They're not one of the banks we work with, but some of them will restrict you from doing it if you're in the last 6 months, which you happen to be. But I think you got to put up a good enough argument. I'll tell you what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and tell you that they're going to waive the penalty for the last 5 months if you just start a new mortgage with them. But obviously, clearly, that's going to be in their best interest because what's your mortgage rate that you're coming off of?
It's right now it's 1.7.
Yeah, so they'll love for you to get rid of the 1.7, and they'll let you off without a penalty for the last 5 months, like you're doing them a favor. But you should be able to port it, and you got to hold firm. So this is an opportunity for you to say, you're going to show me how much you value my business, because if you let me port it, I'll stay with you. But if I have to pay it off and I got to go somewhere else, now you're not going to get my new mortgage. And you have to hold firm with them to make them earn your business, not the other way around. So, but you should be able to port it.
Okay.
Yeah. So reach out to your, I don't know that you can do anything now because it's still too far away, but I would say start reaching out to your bank maybe around May or so. If your closing is the end of July, 2 to 3 months ahead of time, reach out to them, see what they say. And if you're not getting the right answer, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. I give the notice to my renter for one of the houses, and in April 1st, he's going to be out.
Yeah.
Is that enough time to sell the house from April to July?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what's going on in the market at the time. But, I mean, it sounds like it's
time of year, though, right?
Yeah, it's a great time of year. I mean, you're in our spring market. As long as it shows well. I mean, my guess is when the renter gets out of there, you're going to probably have to do a little bit of work. So,
yes, of course.
Yeah, I'll probably bank on a couple weeks to a month to do some work in there, and then gives you another month and a half, 2 months to sell the property, which is definitely doable.
When do you want it closed by?
By the end of July.
Even earlier, right? I mean, if it's empty, you don't need it anytime soon. So, I mean, ideally, if the renter gets out April 1st, clean it up, and with a little luck, it's sold by the end of May, beginning of June, so that you close and you've got the money for your down payment for your new house at that point.
Just know, just know, I'm going through it right now with 2 of my properties. Just know when your renter leaves, you're going to have more work than you thought you were going to have because
of course.
I mean,
I've been in the house, and it's basically he has 3 young kids, and it's a disaster.
I mean,
you have to make a paint job, in the whole house.
Yeah. But it definitely gives you enough time. But you definitely want to sell it without a tenant in there. When you sell it with a tenant in there, I mean, I guess you're lucky that they've agreed to leave. Have you already signed the appropriate forms?
No, he agreed to leave. He's sort of a nice guy, a mutual friend. He brought him to me when I rented to him. So he's.
That's good that you have that, because boy, there's a lot of stories out there where tenants just won't leave. So
they just won't leave. So you're lucky there. Like I said, bank on a month of work. and get that place ready to go. And then, you should have plenty of time to get it sold at that time frame.
Thank you, Mo.
Okay.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, would you, in a scenario like that where the house is vacant, do you sell it vacant or would you have it staged?
I was just going to ask that question.
There you go.
See,
great minds,
sure you were,
great
Steve.
minds
Take credit for Frank's question, but let me answer that question, okay? It all depends. How big the house is, where the house is, what price range they're looking at for this property.
What about a townhome? Does it matter?
No, you don't really have to. So what Greg does really, really well is he virtually stages almost every property that doesn't have furniture in it. He could cut things out. He can add things. And then, of course, he can virtually stage every room to make it look like it has been staged. And then there's other scenarios where you actually have to bring in the staging. So it all depends on how big the home is, what location it's in, what price they're hoping for. I mean, if they're hoping to hit a home run, sometimes you could do a little bit extra. But as part of our services, we will not only bring Greg in to do the professional photography and the drones and the videos and all that, but he could actually virtually stage the rooms as well. So they look
how much
amazing.
staging do you actually need? Do you need like a living room and bedroom done?
Well, you need your principal rooms definitely done. Like if you're gonna stage a property, I would, and you agree to do bedrooms, I would do one bedroom. I would probably do the master bedroom. You could leave the others vacant or cheaply stage the other rooms. But you definitely want to do things like your dining room, your living room, your family room, your dens, things like that on the main level. It's more important to stage the main level than it would be to stage a second level when it comes to bedrooms and stuff like that. People can envision their furniture in a bedroom. They struggle to envision their furniture in a dining room, a living room, a family room, one of those main principal rooms. But
do you need that in a smaller townhome, though?
You don't. Most townhomes, you can, like I said, virtually stage them. But if you don't virtually stage them, sometimes they show better vacant anyways.
Yeah.
As long as there's not a lot of work that needs to be done. I mean, if the walls are all scratched up and the floors are scratched up, I mean, sometimes a little bit of staging might take your eye off those issues and put it onto something else. But yeah, certain smaller homes you do not have to stage, but I'd make sure they're definitely extremely clean.
Yeah, they better be clean.
They better be very clean because you notice everything when you're when you have a vacant property. But there's two trains of thought. You actually stage it so people can see what furniture looks in the area.
Make it homey, right?
Or you don't stage it so people can picture their furniture in the area. So without getting me through the door, it's hard to say whether you should stage this one or whether you shouldn't. But virtual staging is definitely a must when it comes to a vacant property.
Do you let people know, Paul, that you virtually staged it on the MLS? Like,
we have to.
You have
we
to.
have to
yeah,
disclose
because I was going to say,
Yeah.
like, if I'm looking at it on a computer and I see all this, and then I go in the house, it's empty. It's like, wait a second.
So a lot of times, Greg, what we'll do is we will post the living room vacant and then the virtual stage living room as well,
That's
so
what
people
it
can
look
see.
like.
Yeah, but we put in the write-ups that pictures have been modified to reflect a virtual stage or something like that. So we definitely let people know that it is virtually staged. But it's just, a vacant home, if you're not willing to do the staging and you would rather just do the virtual staging, yes, it does cost me quite a bit of money to get that virtual staging done, but it is definitely worth it. And
what are you doing to your properties?
I'll have those virtually staged. Yeah, like those ones. They're townhomes, simple townhomes, and I'll get Greg in to shoot them probably, the first week of January, and I'll get them to virtually stage the room so they look perfect.
What percentage of vacant properties are staged compared to not staged?
It's still a low percentage because staging is not cheap. I mean, if you take let's say a townhome, you're probably upwards of $3,000 to $4,000 a month to stage that. Now, if you're in a market where homes sell in 7 days, I mean, okay, you're paying for a month of staging. But, if you're in a tougher market where they could sit anywhere from, a month to 2, potentially 3 months, you're now paying upwards of, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 in staging. It starts to really eat into your profits. And that's why sometimes virtually staging, because we know, number one, you just got to get bodies through the door. The easiest way to get bodies through the door is make the curb appeal and the appearance of the property look really appealing. If you can do that, you get people through the door, then they can position their own furniture. They can, decide where they want to place things in that. And so sometimes virtually staging is enough to do.
This year we have 1.2 million mortgages
coming up for renewal.
That are fixed mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming off of what?
Depending on their term. I mean, I had a lady that called me this week. She's at 1.69. Unfortunately, she chose a 3-year mortgage instead of a 5-year mortgage when
Oh, when she got it.
Yeah, but most of them will be like this gentleman that called, right? Coming off a high one.
Well, high ones will be once we hit the pandemic, right? So we're hitting the 5-year anniversary in March of the pandemic, and in April, May, and June, we saw Bank of Canada lower, and the bond markets absolutely plummet. And if you remember, not a lot of us were going out, but even gasoline was like 60 cents a liter the first month or two of the pandemic. So, that's exactly what we're up against on the renewal side this year. So
they're looking at 3 points higher at least.
Well, we're in the 4s now. You're right. I mean, we're going to be in the low 4s somewhere right now. I hope, fingers crossed, and we'll talk about, in the second half of the show, we'll talk about what we expect to see in 2025. But, I'd like to see fixed rates come down by 1 percentage point. We've seen prime rate come down by 1 3/4, and really fixed rates have come down maybe a half, maybe 3/4 of a point. So there's a big lag there, which we expected. But as we continue to see prime rate, and now prime rate, we talked about the half point. It might only be a 1/4 point now. But inflation, we began the year with inflation at 2.9. We went all the way down to 1.6, now at 1.9. So inflation shouldn't be a concern anymore. Now it's about the employment numbers, and it's about what's happening south of the border and the tariffs. Those are going to be the main drivers of what happens both on the Bank of Canada side with variable or adjustable rate mortgages, and on the bond market, which impacts fixed rates.
So all things out of our control. Perfect.
Yeah.
They've always have been, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is what we expect to happen doesn't necessarily happen. And even though they tell you they're going to do something, and an example is the government. All they talked about at the beginning of this year is the fact they're going to make more homes available. They're going to open up land. They're going to bring it down. And in Ottawa, the development costs have actually gone up instead of come down. So everything they said, they've actually done the exact opposite.
And I think Frank and I over the last 5 years have been pretty honest saying that we can't fully predict what's going to happen the following year, mainly because it's things.
There's so many factors.
There's so many factors.
Out of
so many
nowhere.
factors.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere is right.
Yeah.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. To the phones we go. Say hello to Dan in Ottawa. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, Dan.
It's actually Sammy. I don't know if you guys remember from the Sammy show.
Sammy.
I called you guys. Yeah.
I like it.
I'm in the construction industry.
Yep.
And
what are you feeling?
so I just want to kind of give heads up that there's no actual start date for winter work in respect to the big builders. So that means
they're not building.
They're not building.
Yeah.
And actually it was pushed back. So that means there's no winter work. Apparently, for us, there's no actual start back date.
Yeah, which is crazy, isn't it? Because normally you would know that they would force you to come back early.
Exactly.
These are so busy, and all of a sudden now, my buddy said the same thing. He goes, the amount of work, the amount of requests that I got to go do some work is down like 60, 70% because there's just nobody.
Are they waiting for rates
building
to come down?
Well, I think they're waiting for multiple things, but I think with development costs being so high and first-time home buyers not quite out there yet, a lot of builders are just pulling back and saying, let's wait until the rates come down before we actually have buyers so that we can sell the properties at that point.
I mean, a lot of these people look at these builders that have these deep pockets and that, and a lot of builders do have deep pockets, but keep in mind, they're carrying millions of dollars in land, millions of dollars of shovels in the ground, millions of dollars of material. Like, they have to get financing from the bank, and when the rates are upwards of 4, 5, 6, 7%, it's very, very expensive for a builder to hold all this inventory and property.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If you're slower and a bunch of trades are slower, would that kind of become more competitive that some companies or some people would bring their prices down and maybe make houses a little bit more affordable? Not that the builders would pass that on, because in many cases, some of them would actually keep that extra money anyway, but...
Yeah, so I think a lot of times the builders will build ahead, especially in the sewer and water, and get the roads in, just in anticipation to get building permits for housing. But I've been working all over Ottawa on different sites as far as Richmond, the Mintos out on March Road. It's slow.
Yeah,
I mean, they've prepped certain roads, but there's no houses being dug.
And I think
that's been all summer.
And I think it's going to continue. I really do. And unfortunately, it is going to continue. They say it's easier to get shovels in the ground. We know it's not easier to get shovels in the ground. And this is, someone who's in the industry right now saying that there's just no work, meaning builders are not building, which is concerning.
No.
Very concerning.
and this is a trickle effect. I only noticed it this summer being slow, but 3 huge job sites have been on hold, and that means it's going to be really slow. And apparently, like, layoffs have started, I don't know, a month ago, but I mean, now the holiday seasons, but apparently being called back is probably pushed back till spring right now.
Wow.
And goes into the Orleans and whatnot. So I'm talking like the Matamis, the Caven, and
the mega builders, right? If the mega builders are slow, that's concerning.
Build ahead. They like to actually keep us busy in anticipation for that spring or summer rush. So they actually like to get the roads in. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get building permits if you get your hydrants in. So, I mean, that's not even going ahead. So, I mean, to me personally, it was almost something's going on. And the builders know this. I don't know if it's Trump, the economy, the world.
What's that mean to you, though, Sammy? Like do you own a company, or are you just individual? You're a tradesperson?
I work for an actual major contractor, like the Kavanaughs, the Tomlinsons of the world.
Yep.
Yeah. And
are they laying off, or are you finding that they're having to make some tough decisions?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
The summer was really slow. I mean, multiple crews being put together. And so to me, it was kind of like, things are slow. So they're just finding us work and doing steady work, which is not the builder stuff. So they're just looking for little projects here and there. So it's kind of...
So you think it'll be slow again this year?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if there's no winter work, that means, everything's not a go. Right?
Everything's pushed back.
So that is concerning, because, I mean, that's our spring market, right? If there's no winter work, that's our spring market, right? So if there's no homes being built and there's no product for people to buy, we rely on the new home product for a decent chunk of our sales every single year.
And work for us. I mean, it's not just the sewer and water, the roads, but we're digging the basements, but then the foundation guys, carpenters.
It's everything. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed it on general sites, but there's been a standstill. You don't see these multiple pickup trucks and vans around sites. It's just been so scarce. And that's been this summer. I've been to...
Even with all the help we've been getting from government?
I don't know if the government is as stable as we make it out to be. So I think I think the developers are a bit cautious, and I see it even...
Well, obviously what they're doing is not working.
Well, I don't know if it's not working. I mean, that doesn't take much to build. I mean, there's a process there that's been there for many years.
No. I'm talking about the government incentives.
And that too. Again, I mean, people are like the Brazils and whatnot. Instead of building condos, they're building rentals, and even the rentals are slow. They're giving you 1 month, 2 months incentives. It seems like all of these buildings. So I mean, the housing crisis. I don't know if it's as much of a housing crisis as they're making it out to be, or whoever it's making it out to be. But I think it's okay. I mean, there's tons of buildings that are going to be finished very shortly, probably in the next 6 months. I mean, you look on Carling and whatnot, there's huge developments, but again, geared to the rental market. And I don't know if it's going to be a soft market for the housing. I don't think builders are building these single-family homes. I don't think they're selling these $1 million. I mean, a single-family home right now for Minto is close to $1 million. I don't know how many are being built, but...
I know, that's Rushforth money.
Yeah, we were... we were in a Richcraft development where single-family homes, we're talking blocks, were changed to townhouse. We had to split up the actual sewers to make more houses in the townhouses.
And that's not a bad. Listen, that's not a bad thing. I mean, high density building is what's going to get us out of this trouble. Yeah. And I think builders make more profit on high density homes as well,
as long as they're building.
True. Yeah. But they're shifting. I mean, that's costing them a lot of money. We're talking like $500,000 to convert a street into a townhouse. Like, you're building more units. So they made that decision when they committed to single family to actually converting them to towns. So, I mean, for them to actually do that, I think personally, it's a lot of money. So you got
to build what demand is, though, right?
Exactly. So, absolutely. I mean, they are shifting. So I found that was interesting this year, and that was in the Canada area. And I thought, that's interesting. But, a townhouse is like $650.
Yeah.
Yeah,
brand
but
new. So that's a lot of money.
That's what builders should be building is condos and townhomes right now, mainly because that's what people are going to be buying, because we got a lot of these first time home buyers who are coming off the fence, and then that's what they're going to buy. So
it just seems expensive to me. But anyways, I was just calling in to give a little bit of a footnote of personally what I've seen.
We appreciate that.
Here's hoping you get busier.
Great insight, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you. So they're waiting for rates to come down, basically. Right?
They are, but people just think builders have all these deep pockets that they just pay cash for everything, and they can't. I mean,
well, they're paying interest too.
Do you know do you know how much it costs to just get permits to start a subdivision, to then do the roads and the sewers and all that kind of
I know it's too much.
But it's millions and millions and millions of dollars before they even put a shovel in the ground to build a house.
Yeah. Again, think about it then, right? So here's the city getting permit money, getting thousands of dollars for permits. You've got the taxes that are off the charts. Like here, if houses are built, the revenue goes up because the tax revenue goes up. So you would think that they're motivated to have more houses built because their revenue goes up. Instead, they make it more difficult and more expensive to do it. The whole system needs a whole revamp right now.
But there's too many levels of government involved.
We talked about over the last couple of weeks, even the builder I'm dealing with Clement Homes, with Charles, his permits are doubling.
And that just doesn't make any sense.
But this isn't where he's building. He is building the community. Like, he's putting so many homes in this community that he's pretty much building it alongside the EQ Homes of the world and other medium-sized builders. They're entrenched in that neighborhood, and they're doing a wonderful job of building up this community. And then now the city's coming to them and saying, no problem. Thanks for paying $20,000, $30,000 for a permit per door. It's now $50,000. Yeah. You know, thanks for building up our community. It's now $50,000 for a permit. What are you saying to builders?
But you got one level of government saying, yeah, okay, we're going to help you out. And the next is going, we're going to double your permits.
Well, I've said this before, and we've had Charles on the show, and he corroborated this. They're not making it any easier on builders. Yeah. They're just not. I mean, I'm friends with so many builders that they say it's a joke what they have to do just to get.
So now what happens? What do we do?
Well, guess what? When we come back in this last segment, we will have some predictions of what's going to go on in 2025 and where I do believe the new home market is going to go, as well as where sales are going to go. And Frank will obviously talk about where mortgages are going to go and where rates are going to go. And coming up in the last segment,
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about let's talk about. You know what we could do? We could talk about how my Chiefs destroyed Frank's Steelers. We could.
Haven't even talked about breakfast yet. 521 talk 521-8255. We'll be right back. Crystal ball time. I like crystal ball time.
Me too.
All right, Frank. Let's start with you. A, are mortgages going to be in the threes, and if so, when?
Threes by late spring, I say, maybe even early spring, depending on what happens with. I mean, again, there's lots of factors, and that could change. But, you know, I think most people are pretty confident, or at least the Bank of Canada is pretty comfortable with the fact that inflation's under control now. So they don't have to worry about inflation. What they got to worry about is the other things around us, which are obviously the threat of tariffs by Donald Trump, potentially a leadership change in Canada, or sure feels like that right now.
At least an election, anyway.
Yeah, maybe a spring election instead of a fall election. Yeah. Who knows? So there's factors that'll come into play. But the one thing we do know is that inflation's back to normal, unemployment's up, our Canadian dollar's down, and the economy seems to be struggling because the numbers that come out are questionable. So we don't know. It feels like the GDP has been down for 6 straight quarters, which would identify that as a recession. But they amended them once to make it look like that quarter was up to avoid the recession part. So
number-wise, best case scenario for rates and worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario is they stay flat.
Could we get low threes?
Yes. So I think best case scenario would be that we could get, again, if the tariffs come into play, we could see twos. Like if the tariffs are instituted, we could see twos. But realistically, you know, I would say that by late spring, early summer, we should see fixed rates closer to 3.5%, hopefully.
That's awesome.
And we should see Bank of Canada drop maybe 1 percentage point in 2025 so that, you know, where prime rate today is at 5.45, it would be at 4.45 at the banks, where in 2019, pre-pandemic, it was 3.95, so just slightly more than where it was pre-pandemic. So that's what I think will happen for interest rates. I think if you got a mortgage coming up for renewal,
you want to hold out until the very end. You don't, again, banks make a lot of money by calling clients and saying, hey, your mortgage is coming up in April. We can renew you now. We won't charge you a penalty, but I'm at 179. Why would I pay a penalty? Why would I even give it up? Don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. Whatever you do, do not fall into that trap. Wait your mortgage out because the likelihood is that interest rates will be lower closer to your maturity date than they are today.
Yeah, there's a big gap right now.
Huge. Massive.
First of all, I'm surprised you went to Frank first because usually he doesn't leave any time for anything else. So
well, I'm leaving you time, see?
Well, I'm going to talk right into the camera so you can use this as our video, okay? So there we go. So sorry, Steve, you were about to ask me a question there.
So it looks like all the experts are saying this winter is going to be busier than normal. What the heck is normal these days?
Well, first of all, last year we didn't have a winter or a spring. I mean, our spring mark was well delayed, and we didn't really start to pick it up until sort of summertime / fall time. But so what are we going to see this year? I think we're going to see more people come off the fence. I mean, once we have that rate announcement at the end of January, which is most likely a quarter drop, I'm hoping to get more first-time home buyers, more investors off the market. You know, this year we'll probably end somewhere in the 12% range. Number of sales are up 12%. Average sale price will probably be up 1.5%, somewhere in that range when the numbers come out. I think we'll probably be pretty consistent next year at the same. Maybe our average sale price might be up a little bit more in the 3 to 4 to 5 range. Which is much more significant than the 1.5 we're going to end this year. So we will see prices start to come up. I think we will see some inventory start to hit the market early spring. I have said before, don't wait until mid to late spring. Get your house on the market earlier. If you're a buyer, I'd be looking earlier. You will have a lot of product on the market and a lot of options. I would like to see builders starting to build a little bit more feverishly as the rates come down. So I will say that we will start to see that. I mean, it was a disheartening call to hear that, the trades aren't even working right now. I think that'll change. I think as the rates come down, more builders are carrying a lot of land. So I think we're going to see builders start to put shovels in the ground a little bit quicker. So all in all, I think it's going to be a healthy year. I mean, no one wants to see what we saw at the start of 2022. So I think we will go up double digits for number of sales in 2025. Average sale price anywhere between 3 and 5% next year, which is a healthy increase that, doesn't take the market out of balance. And that sort of is my prediction for next year.
When will the market pick up? Mid-January, late January, February, March?
I think mid-January. Once people get over the Christmas drunkenness, I think will really start to come back. I mean, people go back to work on like the 2nd or the 3rd this year. So I think we'll start to pick up a little bit earlier. I am telling people that if you have a house to sell, I'd get it on the market sooner than later, right away in January if you can. And if you're a buyer, I'd be looking now for properties. I wouldn't wait until mid-spring. We might see a little bit of a surge in pricing, not crazy, but a little bit of surge in pricing as we get that rate drop at the end of January, waiting for our next one in March. So we will have an earlier spring, and what I am predicting is actually we will have a spring this year, which we didn't have last year. So,
you think we're going to get a quarter point?
It feels like a quarter right now. Now, that being said, employment numbers will come out. The labor report will come out in January, and historically the January one isn't so bad because it's still factors in hiring for the Christmas season. The one in February is going to be the big concern. So depending on, in January is when we start to see the trustees tell me all the time this is their busiest month is in January. Because from a retail or business standpoint, you wait out until the end of the year, make your hay, especially during the Christmas season, and then, you'll do your bankruptcy or proposal in January, February. So consumers as well, though. I mean, there's, people are spending, putting stuff on credit cards. So, again, it's going to happen in January, February. So that'll be the concern as well as layoffs. There's lots of major companies that are talking about layoffs in, the beginning of 2025. So I think we might see a quarter in January, and if the employment numbers come in as poorly as I think they might in February, that's when in March we might see that half again.
Will we see more listings with people having to get out of their mortgages?
Well, I don't know that we'll see people. Canadians are very, very determined to stay in their home once they get in there. So if anything, anybody that has a mortgage coming up, at least they've acquired, like from an equity standpoint, they've built up some really good equity over the last 5 years with the house prices going up as much as they have. So at the very least, they'll be able to tap into some of that equity get their debts under control, maybe have just the one mortgage instead of all these other debt payment, and at the same time reamortize it over 30 years if the rates are still high, just to give you some breathing space and be able to stay in your home.
Average closing now, 3 months?
No, that's a little long.
Is it?
Average closing anywhere between 30 to 60 days is probably average. You'll stretch some to 90 and 120 days, but the average closing is probably between a month and 2 is probably the
So
the
if
average.
you're buying, are you in the driver's seat right now to push for a longer closing where rates will be lower in 3 months?
Well, right now, our numbers are still suggesting that we are in a seller's market. We are more into a balanced market, and I think unless the market really starts to pick up, we're teetering towards a weak buyer's market. Saying that, as the rates start to come down and people start to put their home on the market and people start shopping, I think we're going to be in a balanced market, potentially closer to a seller's market as we get into the Jan, Feb, and March of next year. But like I said, I would suspect that we do have a good kick early on in January, and as a realtor, I'm working really hard with my management team to really start to we need to pour on our sales before this election comes, because I really think that's when things will slow down a little bit for the short term. We're not like the States where our election goes on for 6, 8, 10,
but Ottawa's
12 months.
affected more than any other.
Ottawa's definitely affected more than anywhere. So it all depends. There's lots of variables on what's going to happen with the market next year. But guess what? If you listen to the show every Saturday, you'll know what's going on with the market.
It's the only reason I come.
There you go, Stephen.
Birthdays, Frank?
Got a few. My little nephews, Paolo and Claudio Violante, both celebrating their birthdays.
Solid German.
Didn't they just have birthdays last year?
Yeah, they did, yep. Yeah. Adamo Flores, my little cousin, celebrating his birthday, and then good friend of the show and good friend of ours, Johnny Rogers, celebrating his birthday on New Year's Eve, December 31st, and wishing his wife, Jan, getting a little healthy. So
Johnny having a birthday.
Johnny having a birthday.
Every year, John, you drive a little shorter.
Yeah. Back doesn't
Big
turn
hitter.
like it used to, Johnny.
Big hitter. But, well, he's lost 50 pounds, too, so that doesn't... Well, it helps him look good.
For me, no birthdays, but I do want to wish everybody a happy new year, and I wish them a very solid, prosperous 2025.
Yep, same thing. I mean, thank you for everything, all our listeners in 2024. Thank you for making the show successful as it is, and for using both our services, Paul's and I. But at the same time, I wish everyone a healthy 2025. It starts with health. Everything else is secondary, in my opinion. So
100%.
Have a great week, everybody.
And please support local business and charities, everyone. Happy New Year.